Hello and welcome to Aviation 101 with Laura. I got a new camera, so it's an upgrade camera. Hope you guys like how it looks. I'm hoping it's better video quality, so that's new for 2026. And also, I want to come to you with some scenarios that were provided to me from major airline interview. It's kind of like a dispatch resource management scenario. I've changed them, so I'm not going to tell you where they came from, and I'm not going to tell you how I got them, but I've messed with them, so they're not going to be totally obvious, hopefully, where they came from. Also, before we get into the scenarios, I do want to show you that on my website, I have added a couple new courses. These have been pretty popular. The OpSpecs courses for dispatch prep, airline pilot, scenario interview prep, very helpful. I have added a couple more, mastering TAFs and mastering METARs. So they build on some existing videos I've got where I go through METARs, TAFs, there's worksheets, there's quizzes, and I have two others in the workload that I'm doing. It's going to be about alternates for part 91, and then another one that's going to be alternates for part 121, operations, and I hope to release those very soon. And then we'll have a course bundle option that is also going to become available. So check them out. These newer courses are a little cheaper, $4.99, but then these other ones have been quite popular and some people have been using them. So, and I think that is awesome. So thank you guys for your support. So the new courses are coming online. All right, so let's get into some scenarios here. So first scenario, we got a flight. It is en route. It's flying. You get notified by the crew that an MEL should have been added that did not get added for a nav light. They found it didn't work on pre-flight, and somehow, because of a shift change, you didn't hear about the issue. Before the flight left, a different dispatcher had made the release, but the flight has already left, so it's left Miami. Now, you have to kind of think about this here also. From a flight safety perspective, the flight is going to arrive at its destination, JFK, a couple hours after sunset. So basically, it sounds like it was a misunderstanding, poor communication somehow with the shift turnover, from what I'm grasping out of the scenario. So continuing means the crew would break 14 CFR because you do have to have working navigation lights if you're flying during those hours. So yeah, it would be annoying to have to explain. It's not a safety of flight issue though, and it would make quite a big deal if you have the flight divert somewhere for a nav light that is not working. If it was an honest mistake, this could be reported through like company channels. You could have them fill out an ASAP form. You could do a NASA form to like explain what happened from your perspective as the dispatcher. And then the FAA shouldn't come after people because it sounds like it was an honest mistake. If the captain says they want to divert the flight before it gets illegal, like before it starts getting dark, you could support them in that decision, but I mean, it's going to cause some headache for the operation. Is there anywhere they could go for maintenance between where they're at right now and JFK? I don't know, but you want to check into that. Probably you don't need to have them divert. Now, we do notice that you cannot add an MEL while you're in flight. So this is from 737 MEL I got. We use it for dispatch class, just an excerpt. You can see here, and check out my video on MELs if you want to learn more, but 4 are required, and basically you have 4, but like it says any or all can be inoperative if you have daytime operations. The little C means it's a category C item, talking about the duration of how long you have to fix the item. And then for night operations, you do have to have at least 1 red wingtip bulb, 1 green wingtip bulb, and 1 white light at each wingtip position. So like a tail light, okay? So it does say that 4 are required for night operations because you have 2 wingtip positions. So we can't add an MEL in flight. So going back to this scenario, unfortunately, it would be less annoying if they don't divert. So probably don't have the flight divert, but we cannot add an MEL in the air. So I came up with another scenario So let's say now it's the same scenario with the flight going from Miami to JFK. Now you're notified in flight, the crew looks out and sees the red wingtip light is not on. Maybe they just noticed, or the flight attendant or somebody noticed, or his off-duty pilot, I don't know. But they said, oh, it's not working. And so you look, and in that scenario, that is an item that was completely discovered in flight. You should definitely continue the flight because it must have broke after departure. I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming it worked on pre-flight. They're the ones who are responsible for the pre-flight. I'm not the pre-flight person because I'm the dispatcher. So you can't add an MEL in flight, but by definition, we add those on the ground once they are found. But here's where I would speak to, more big picture view, that if you're interviewing somewhere, they'd like to have you thinking more big picture. Don't just say, oh yeah, have it continue and stop talking. I would actually say, besides, yes, it can continue, what's next for the aircraft though? I'm gonna look at what is happening. Like, is it stopping its daily flight sequence at JFK, or is it going on somewhere else? Okay, if it's going on and it's going to be leaving during night time, then it has to be fixed. Okay, and you might be now speaking with your aircraft scheduling, maintenance control, and saying, hey, I have aircraft that is not going to be able to keep going at Kennedy, but maybe you can get maintenance online and get somebody ready to fix whatever. In this case, the wingtip light is not working on the right wingtip. So that needs to be fixed. So maybe they can have that ready and you're being proactive as a dispatcher, which would be awesome. Or if it's leaving really early the next morning and it's going to be leaving before sunrise, definitely possible. Again, I would be speaking about that. Now, if it's just ending for the day, again, you want to not just be like, okay, whatever, let the next dispatcher deal with that. That's not really thinking big picture. So that's what I would answer this type of thing with. All right, let's go into a different type of scenario. Here we have a captain of a flight going from Kennedy to Seattle, calls before departure and wants 5,000 more pounds of fuel added because there might be delays when you get to Seattle, when he gets to Seattle. So you run the numbers and you find that you're adding the fuel means you're gonna have to bump some payload. What should you do? What is your thought process? Okay, so for this, I would answer like this. Okay, first, is there any company material we're taking or cargo that I could bump? If that type of thing can be bumped, that would probably be better than bumping passengers. Another thing I'm going to do in concert with that is, I don't know what the alternate is that I've using for Seattle, but maybe it's something farther away that the company just always uses. Well, maybe I can find a closer alternate that is a suitable alternate that we have available that lets me reduce the alternate fuel. And so we could reduce my alternate fuel. Maybe I use like Boeing Field, or Seattle is great because there's like 3 airports, all with really long runways. And if they're in our op specs, maybe we can use those to really reduce my alternate fuel. But yes, give the crew, you can see there's more holding fuel being given, and maybe you can solve the situation a bit that way. Okay, but I mean, that might not work because maybe the captain really just wants more fuel, which is probably what's going on here. So next I would say, all right, do we have any non-rev passengers? Do we have any company people going? Do we have any jump seat people who we can bump? Let's remove people who are not generating revenue, who would be less annoyed by being bumped. But let's assume we went through all that and we still have this problem. We're going to have to lose some payload. So I would have a discussion then. I would not try to do this over text or ACARS. That'd be dumb. Have a verbal talk with the captain politely saying, what's the reasoning you're looking at for this? And see what the captain says. If the captain is insisting that we need 5,000 pounds more fuel, you can say, hey, okay, I can give you that fuel. It's going to require bumping some people. So as long as you're okay with that, this is how much people are going to have to bump. I mean, frequently captains don't want to bump people. They know that if the airline just keeps bumping people, that's not going to be a sustainable way to run an airline. But captains also are liable for how much fuel is on the aircraft. So are you as the dispatcher. So, I mean, if the captain insists, then you give the fuel. Perhaps you can compromise with a little bit less, perhaps. But, I would say just go as much as you can. You have to be company representation, being smart about it, but also, explain to the captain the ramifications and see with what you can compromise. So that's kind of how I would go with that scenario. All right, so third, we have this scenario was given to me. Rank these flights in order of importance. Okay, so we have weather. I like to involve Seattle. It is going below landing minimums. All right, I've got 4 flights assigned to me as the dispatcher. Apparently, I'm working the Pacific Northwest area. They're all going to Seattle. All right, so what is the top importance of these flights and why? All right, so I'm going to actually rank them by writing on the slide. So what is my things in order of importance? Okay, I'm going to actually go with number 1 being the flight that is on the ILS at Seattle, and it is inside the final approach fix. Then I'm going to go with this flight. That's what I'm going to give attention to next, the one that's en route, and it's still 3 hours away from Seattle, and Portland is my alternate, PDX. Then I'm going to say, all right, we have this one, the flight that is leaving for departure. It is taxiing right now. It's a DFW, but it's going to Seattle. And then lastly, I'm going to go with the one that's at the gate in Memphis. It's leaving for Seattle in an hour. Okay, so why? Okay. So why do I care mostly about the one first that's on the ILS? Now, if it's gone below landing minimums and it just happened, if the flight is inside the final approach fix, legally they can continue the approach. They can see if they can make out enough visually and they can land. Okay, without more information, I don't know if they're going to see the runway. But why do I really care about that? Okay, here's why. Because that one has the least fuel. All right, it's gone. I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it has an alternate because that wasn't told to me. But it's got the least fuel, most likely, because it is at its destination. And now, if it can't land, I need to be evaluating rapidly what it's going to do. Like, hopefully it has an alternate, but maybe it didn't need one when it left. I don't really know, but, hopefully it has an alternate. And now I need to be thinking about how much fuel it's got. Can it hold somewhere? How much fuel extra do we have? Can it hold somewhere? And we see if the weather comes back. Try another approach if the weather comes above landing minimums, because if it stays below landing minimums, it can't even land. But then I need to send it somewhere else. But with that type of scenario, other airplanes are going to be diverting too if Seattle goes below landing minimums, and I need to get number 1 on the ground before other airports get filled up and overwhelmed. So that one has the least fuel, and time is fuel. So I have the least time on that one. Number 2 flight, the one that's en route and 3 hours away. Okay, so for that one, it is en route, so I can't add fuel while we're flying, but, okay, I can communicate with the crew once I take care of number 1 flight. All right, let's get it going somewhere where it can land. If it can't land at Seattle, so let's get it somewhere it can land. But the second one, that one that's still en route, it's going to Seattle, at least I have an alternate available for it. That's good. Possibly I could have it land and get more fuel if I really wanted to. But I could communicate with the crew, and if Seattle stays bad, we could just have it go to Portland for its alternate. But if that one's kind of taken care of, it's en route. So I do want to tell the crew, give them a weather update and say, hey, the weather's gone below mins at Seattle. I'm going to keep monitoring it. I'll get back with you. So then they know you're being proactive. The one that's taxiing for departure, actually, that's pretty simple, because if Seattle has gone below landing minimums, I may not be able to let that flight leave. Depends on what my manuals say, but I'm supposed to be above landing minimums before I let a flight depart. However, with this scenario, it might be all right to let it depart, but give them an update, or send them back to the gate because I want them to get more fuel. Or if the weather looks like it's going to be bad at Seattle for a really long time, maybe we have it go back to the gate and just wait there, rather than letting it depart. I guess I would have to look more at the weather. And then last priority is something that hasn't even departed yet. I'm not going to worry about that until I take care of number 1 thing and then number 2 thing on that one. So that's my scenario about that. Number 4, that one at the gate, maybe it even just gets canceled. It just depends on what goes on with the weather. All right, so here's another one. ATC contacts you and says, a flight you're monitoring, right now it's en route, Atlanta to Kennedy, having serious engine vibrations on number 1 engine. and number 2 engine they have put to idle. Is that an emergency? Well, yes. It's a degraded engine. They have problems with number 1 engine. Number 2 is at idle because of assuming some kind of issue. If ATC contacted with me, I'm going to run an emergency checklist, see what I have in my dispatch emergency manuals. I can look at the quick reference handbook, the QRH, and see what it says. It probably says land at the nearest suitable airport. Okay, so I can start looking on where they are, figure out where they are, figure out what the nearest suitable airport is. I could send them some message on ACARS. I could declare an emergency with ATC for the crew. I'm assuming they're probably already doing that if they're talking to ATC and telling them what is going on. Okay, but I would also do the following. I would check the landing weight, be ready for them to land at higher than normal landing weight, so over max landing weight. That means I am possibly I'm going to be communicating with maintenance control about potentially overweight landing inspection, if that's what's happening. Again, I don't know what the weight is currently, but I'm going to look at that. Whatever airport they're going to, run performance for that and see what the longest runway is that we can get for them to maximize safety. If the airplane has fuel dumping capability, maybe they can dump some fuel to get it a little bit lighter if they have time. Okay, also, once I figure out where they're diverting, and that could be from talking to ATC, or the crew maybe tells me if they have time, but I would call ahead to whatever station they're diverting to once I've taken care of my other safety things and say there's somebody coming. And then lastly, I'm going to talk to maintenance control about overweight landing. We're going to need an inspection potentially. The aircraft planning people, is their plane's not going to be available. I can't use it for future flights. So those are things I would do once the emergency's been handled from my perspective. But also I would want to speak with my supervisor, people at desks near me, and say, hey, I'm working this emergency. Can you take over my other flights? And get those flights off your desk. That's handling managing your resources as a dispatcher, not trying to do everything all at once. Let's focus on the emergency and then go from there. So I would definitely bring that up in that kind of an interview scenario. Last one, this one's interesting. So we have a flight JFK to Milwaukee. It contacts you over ACARS that says, we hit an object. They think it's a weather balloon. We don't know what it is. Maybe it's debris from SpaceX launch. I have no idea, but they have hit something. They have lost their left aileron control, and they have other flight control degradation. They're working through figuring out what is going on. So you're like, whoa, on ACARS, that's crazy. I'm going to call the crew verbally, if I can. Sat phone would be easiest, or radio. If I can get them radio directly, that would be the best. And I'm talking to the crew, and they say, okay, we want to divert to Erie. I know that's not in my op spec. I'm like, okay. So I'm going to take a look and say, all right, this is a flight control issue. This is an emergency situation. And I want to bring up Alaska Airlines Flight 261. There's a great video about this by Mentor Pilot, so check him out. He's fantastic. But I don't want to let the flight go along the route with flight control problems, because that caused an accident with Alaska Flight 261, and dispatch was involved in that. So really go check that one out. But some other things I could do. So what could I do? I can offer to declare an emergency for the crew if they haven't already. I can send them the weather NOTAMs charts to their electronic flight bag for an airport they're not going to, because they probably don't have a chart for that. So I can try to get that to them. Talk with my performance vendor to give you a max landing weight for that place. At least figure out like what would be the runway performance, the longest runway. I actually looked up Erie, and it's like 9,400 feet long. So maybe that's a good option for them, depending on exactly where they're at. Figuring out how much fuel they're going to have on arrival, pass that along to them. And then like look along the route. Now I did look along that route, and I saw Detroit is not too much farther. That's a bigger airport, has more services. But again, we want to be careful. If they're having flight control problems, that is an emergency. We do want to get the airplane on the ground. So Make a plan to do that. Give them like the fuel on arrival, the weight, that kind of thing. Send them to the airport. Again, if it's not an op specs though, it's a flight control issue, that is an emergency. So I say, yeah, fine. Go to something that is not in the op specs to get the airplane safely on the ground. And once again, like the last scenario, I'd be talking to my supervisor, people near me, and say, hey, can you please take care of my flights because I'm working an emergency here. I need to get this airplane on the ground. And then lastly, once the emergency type is handled, then I could talk about making a plan of getting the passengers, getting the crew, getting the aircraft back, sending out maintenance, figuring out, documenting all this, and then like the airplane is not going to be available to continue its flight sequence. So what are we going to do with that? But yeah. And that is kind of what I would say about that. Now, what I really want to hear from you is a lot of you guys are experienced dispatchers. What else? Okay, what did I miss on those scenarios? What other scenarios have you heard from other people about interview scenarios? Or would you have your own dispatch resource management scenarios? Would love to hear from you. And tell me if the new camera looks good too, because I spent a lot of money on it and I think it looks great. But what do you guys think? So thank you from Laura with Aviation 101 with Laura, and have a great day.